When Maya, recently divorced and emotionally fragile, moves in with her pregnant sister Rena to help around the house, she doesn't anticipate the emotional chaos that awaits. Rena, trusting and overwhelmed, welcomes her warmly, but as Maya spends more time with Arjun, Rena's reserved and distant husband, an undeniable tension builds. Shared moments evolve into stolen glances, and emotional boundaries quietly erode. As Rena sleeps or rests, Maya and Arjun's connection deepens, eventually, crossing into a secret affair driven by loneliness, vulnerability, and selfish desire. Maya convinces herself it's temporary, even harmless. But the illusion shatters when Rena overhears their conversation and confronts the betrayal. Her heartbreak is quiet, but absolute. Banished from the home, Maya spirals into isolation and regret. Months later, she sees a photo of Rena with her newborn, the life Maya helped destroy now existing without her. Overwhelmed with guilt, she writes a letter she never sends, a silent apology that echoes with remorse. The story closes not with reconciliation, but with self-awareness. Maya carries the weight of her choices, not as punishment, but as a memory that reshapes her forever. I hadn't seen my sister in months. When she called and asked if I could stay with her during the final stretch of her pregnancy, I didn't hesitate. After my divorce, I needed something, anything, to give me purpose again. Helping Rena, I told myself, was that thing. Her home was quiet when I arrived, the kind of quiet that wrapped around you like a blanket. Rena greeted me at the door with a tired smile, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other pulling me into a warm hug. She smelled like chamomile tea and laundry detergent, comforting, familiar. "You didn't have to come so early," she said, leading me inside. "I wanted to," I replied. And I meant it. I needed to be needed. Her husband, Arjun, came downstairs a moment later. He offered a polite nod and helped with my bags. He'd always been courteous, calm, the kind of man who rarely raised his voice. But there was something different about him now. His eyes lingered just a second longer, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Still, I brushed it off. Long pregnancies could take a toll on any couple. The house was warm, neat, filled with baby books and half-assembled furniture. I settled into the guest room and quickly found my rhythm, washing dishes, folding laundry, running errands. Rena, ever grateful, thanked me constantly. She spent most of her days resting, propped up with pillows and reading parenting blogs. Arjun worked from home. His office was across the hall from my room. We crossed paths often, in the kitchen, the hallway, sometimes at night when insomnia kept us both up. He'd brew chamomile tea for Rena and offer me a cup too. "Everything okay?" he asked one evening as we stood by the window watching the rain. "Yeah," I said, sipping my tea. "Just adjusting." He nodded. "It's good of you to come. Rena's been really happy since you arrived." There was no flirtation in his tone, just quiet gratitude. And yet, I felt a warmth spread in my chest that had nothing to do with the tea. As the days passed, I began to notice things. Little things. Rena would call out for Arjun, and he wouldn't answer right away. He sat silently during meals, eyes on his phone. When Rena spoke about baby names, he barely reacted. One afternoon, she asked me to go with Arjun to pick up some things from the store. Her feet were swollen, and she didn't want to leave the house. The drive was short, the silence longer. "She's really excited," I said, trying to fill the quiet. "About the baby." Arjun gave a small nod, fingers drumming the steering wheel. "Yeah, it's just a lot." I wasn't ready for how much things would change so quickly. I didn't know how to respond, so I stayed quiet. At the store, we split up. When we met back at the checkout, He was holding a pack of lavender-scented candles. "She used to love these," he said. I couldn't tell if he was speaking to me or just remembering out loud. Back at the house, Rena was napping. Arjun and I unloaded the bags quietly. I reached for a box at the same time he did, and our hands touched. Just a brush, barely more than static. But I froze. So did he. Neither of us said anything. The moment passed, awkward and brief, but it echoed louder than it should have. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I told myself I was imagining things. He was just tired. I was just lonely. The next morning, I found Rena in the nursery, folding baby clothes. "I think he's just overwhelmed," she said, unprompted, as if sensing my thoughts. "He doesn't talk about it, but I know." I nodded slowly. "You two okay?" "We will be," she said. "Once the baby's here, things will settle. He's not good with change, that's all." She smiled then, genuine, full of hope. And guilt stabbed me in the chest for reasons I didn't fully understand. Later that evening, I caught Arjun staring. It wasn't a glance. It lingered. It wasn't innocent, and I didn't look away. The moment passed, but it didn't vanish. In the days that followed, the air inside the house shifted, imperceptibly at first, like humidity before a storm. Arjun and I kept our distance, but the space between us began to hum with unspoken thoughts. We avoided eye contact more than we should have. And when we did lock eyes, it was always a second too long. Rena remained blissfully unaware. She moved slowly now, her body weighed down by the baby and fatigue. She napped more often, sometimes mid-conversation, her sentences trailing off into silence. One afternoon, while she slept upstairs, I found Arjun in the kitchen, struggling to fix the coffee grinder. I offered to help. Our hands brushed again. This time, neither of us pulled away. "I don't know what we're doing," I whispered, even though no one else was there. "Neither do I," he said, eyes fixed on mine. "But it doesn't feel wrong. It should have. It should have felt wrong in every possible way, but instead, it felt like relief. Like finally breathing after holding your breath too long. That night, it happened. Rena had gone to bed early with a headache. The house was dim, save for the soft glow of the kitchen light. I was wiping down the counters when Arjun entered, quiet as always. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. He stepped closer. I didn't move. His hand brushed mine, and this time, it lingered. When he kissed me, it wasn't rushed or frantic. It was slow, deliberate, and heartbreakingly tender. We didn't speak of it afterward. There was no confession, no apology. Just silence, thick and trembling. The next morning, the air felt heavier. I expected guilt to claw at me, but what I felt instead was confusion. It wasn't just about desire. It was something deeper. I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Arjun listened. He looked at me like I mattered. My ex-husband had made me feel invisible. Here, I wasn't. It didn't stop at one moment. Over the following days, stolen touches became routine. Quick, glances across the room, hands brushing under the dinner table, whispers shared in the hallway. Every interaction was laced with the thrill of secrecy and the danger of being discovered. I told myself it wasn't serious, that it was temporary, that once the baby came, everything would change. But it was serious. One rainy afternoon, we were alone again. Rena was at her prenatal appointment with a neighbor who'd offered to drive her. Arjun and I stood in the living room, the ticking clock louder than usual. "I think about you more than I should," he said. You're married. To my sister, I replied, the words heavy with shame. I know. We didn't touch that time. But the look in his eyes said everything. We were already too far gone. That night, I found Rena crying quietly in the nursery. She wiped her tears when I entered, but I saw the red in her eyes. Is everything okay? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Just hormones. I don't know. Arjun feels far away lately. I swallowed hard. You think he's cheating? I asked before I could stop myself. She looked startled. No, nothing like that. He's just distant, preoccupied, maybe scared. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to confess everything, fall to my knees and beg for forgiveness. But instead, I rubbed her back, told her everything would be fine, and hated myself for every word. From that night on, I stopped meeting Arjun's eyes. I avoided him, retreated to my room, buried myself in chores. I thought if I created enough distance, it might undo what we'd done. But avoidance only fed the silence between us, and silence can be louder than any confession. One evening, as I folded blankets in the living room, Rena came down from upstairs without a sound. I didn't hear her at first. I was too focused on Arjun, who stood across from me, our conversation, low and tense. You haven't said more than 2 words to me in days, he said. I'm trying to stop this, I replied, voice trembling, before it ruins everything. And then we heard her. Stop what? Rena stood at the foot of the stairs, one hand on the railing, the other curled around her belly. Her face was unreadable, but her voice cut through the room like glass. Neither of us spoke. The silence this time wasn't quiet. It screamed. Stop what? Her voice didn't rise, but it echoed louder than any scream. Arjun stiffened. I froze. Rena stood there, her hand trembling on the stair rail, her expression unreadable. There was no need for explanation. Her silence was a verdict. No one moved. The weight of our choices pressed down like a closing door. Arjun opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. He couldn't lie. Not now. Not after what she'd heard. Rena took a slow step forward. I want to hear it from you, she said, eyes on me. The room spun. My throat dried. I wanted to vanish. I wanted to undo it all. I didn't mean for it to happen, I whispered. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in disbelief. You didn't mean to kiss my husband, sleep with him, look me in the eye and lie every day? I didn't. My voice cracked. Rena, I'm so sorry. She let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Sorry? She shook her head slowly. You came here to help. You were supposed to protect me, and you... She turned to Arjun. You were supposed to love me. Arjun stepped forward. Rena, I never stopped. Don't, she snapped. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was final. She sank onto the couch, cradling her belly as though drawing strength from the life inside her. The silence that followed was longer than any I had known. When she finally spoke again, her words were brittle but composed. I need you to leave. She didn't say who. She didn't have to. We both knew. I packed in silence. My hands shook. Every folded shirt felt like a confession. I avoided the mirror. I couldn't look at myself. Arjun stayed upstairs. Cowardice or strategy? I didn't know. When I walked past Rena, she didn't look up. Just kept her gaze fixed on the window, as if watching some distant version of her life slip away. I closed the door behind me. and with it, a part of myself. Weeks passed. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. The walls were bare, the air heavy. I went through the motions, work, meals, sleep, but I moved like a ghost. I didn't call. I didn't write. There was nothing I could say that would matter. One afternoon, I saw them. A social media post. A picture of Rena in the hospital, holding a newborn wrapped in a pale green blanket. Her smile was faint, but real. Arjun was beside her, distant, in posture, but present. The image sat on my screen like a photograph from a world I'd been exiled from. I closed the app and cried for the first time since leaving. One evening, I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to ask for forgiveness, I didn't deserve it, but to say what I hadn't been brave enough to say before. You trusted me, and I broke that trust in the cruelest way. I don't expect your forgiveness. I only want you to know that I see it now. All of it. I see how loneliness made me selfish. How my pain became an excuse to take what wasn't mine. I watched you grow a life inside you while I dismantled yours behind your back. There is no way to undo what I did. But I promise I will never forget it. You are stronger than either of us deserved, and I am sorry. I didn't send it. I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer. Some wounds aren't meant to be reopened. The guilt never left. It followed me in quiet moments, in the sound of a lullaby playing from a stranger's car, in the sight of siblings laughing, on a park bench. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a fracture. Sometimes I wondered if Arjun stayed, if they worked it out. Other times, I hoped she left him. Not out of spite, but because she deserved more than what he gave. More than what I took. But mostly I hoped she healed. As for me, I learned to live with silence, to let it settle, not as punishment, but as memory. One day, maybe, she'll read the letter. Or maybe she never will. But I'll keep it. Because some apologies aren't meant to be heard. They're meant to be carried.